Welcome back. You're watching Signature TV, and this is Signature Morning, and we're doing something amazing from insurance. We're talking local government autonomy. Yes, recently the Supreme Court actually gave full financial autonomy to local government, even though some persons have kicked against it, saying it goes against the spirit of the Constitution. In fact, the three local government chairmen of Oyo states pulled out of Algon, saying that they love that the federal government pays the local government allocation through the state government. But then, how important is this particular topic? It's because it talks about activities at the local level. Today we have joining us via Zoom is Chukwuma from Okenwa, CEO. Thank you for joining us, sir. Good morning. Hello, Mr. Chukwuma.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah.
Good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. I have my colleague also, the person of Chamalina, on this discourse.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Okenwa.
Yeah, good morning. Pleasure. Good morning.
All right, straight to the point. Local government elections for the very first time in 11 years. Anambra State will be doing their local government elections by September. Enugu State elections, local government elections is due in October. The Supreme Court has done something really fantastic. So many persons have pointed out it's not in the spirit of the Constitution. For you, how do you welcome the development so far? And do you think that the latest Supreme Court judgment would in any way improve on what the local government has been in the last few years?
I would say that the news came to me with mixed feelings. Mixed feelings because for two things. We are addressing one problem, which has to do with deficiency of the law. Because if we have three tiers of government, then there should be some level of autonomy. And any autonomy that doesn't co-opt financial autonomy ceases to be one. So reasonably, where this amendment was expected would be with the National Assembly. But it's also another case study of the Supreme Courts or the judiciary playing the role of not just an arbiter or an interpreter of the law, but also like a lawmaker, and which should not be like that, being that at the moment, the constitution we have, which has not been amended, clearly states how those funds should go. So in the course of trying to stop the problem of, not allowing governors to use the local government system as a conduit for siphoning of funds, we're also creating another trend of like trying to always use the judiciary to thwart the law, and a few more other cases like we saw in the last End Bad Governance protest, where like the FCT minister had to get like a sort of court judgment, against the principle of the Constitution that citizens have the right to protest. I'm not saying where protesters are restricted, given where to protest such that they will not be seen. Another instance is also like in the fiscal policy and monetary policy, the inalienable rights of CBN, when CBN wanted to change the old Naira notes, the Supreme Court also was used by the governors. They certainly have no role to play in those areas. But howbeit, I would say that that judgment, should be a reflection of what our constitution ideally would be, so that local government, which is designed for local impact, can actually begin to touch lives at that particular level. People in the local government, they also deserve good governance. You see, one of the problems we've seen is, like in Enugu State, for instance, if a new governor comes and you focus on making impact in the Enugu metropolis, which is just three local governments, and not even entirely three local governments, because you still have some of those local governments, the metropolitan local government, that still have a rural component. So once you do that, the people are excited that this governor is transformational. But we know that you have a lot of people also in the rural area, and they deserve access to good health, they deserve access to education, they deserve access to market and also entrepreneurship, and also opportunities for young persons. And we can actually achieve that by making the local government system efficient and functional.
Okay, I'm just wondering if you say that's a good thing, but then we still have to amend the constitution. Why do you think that the Attorney General of the Federation did not advise the president to go through the National Assembly to amend that section of the constitution so that it will at least scale through? Because it does look like there's still a lacuna to be salvaged, because we have even 33 local government chairmen in Oyo State, pulling out of Algon, saying that the federal government should maintain status quo. That's one. Two, we also say that there are other things that have cropped up, that even if you have this autonomy, it is not a guarantee that activities will return to the local government, that the governors will still have a say in what happens at the local government level.
Okay, so two things. First and foremost, let me recognize the fact that at the moment there's an executive bill as it has to do with local government autonomy, sponsored by Mr. President to the National Assembly. And we are waiting to see what happens with that bill. But having said that, we know the way it has always been like in Nigeria, trying to, because you have access to the Supreme Court. But I think also it's very shameful, right? Because what we expect the interpreters of the law to do is that anything that is not the law is not within their jurisdiction to decide, or anything that the law clearly states that may be okay when it comes to monetary policy, leave it all entirely to CBN. When it comes to amendment of the law or making of the law, leave it entirely to the legislature. It shouldn't be a situation where anybody can meet you and say, okay, fine, we don't agree with this. What does the Supreme Court think? The court is not a place of thinking. It's actually a place of judgment, drawing inference based on cases. And I think, it's really time to really salvage the Nigerian court, because they have reduced themselves to less of what, the constitutional provision. And we see that kind of thing where even sometimes you could see executive playing the role of either the legislature or judiciary and vice versa. What am I even saying about? Haven't you seen legislators, sometimes they want to carry constitutional projects, right? Like carry out some projects, which, it's not really supposed to be like that. The executive also in some cases, even for the governors, it's really shocked many Nigerians when voices like us began to tell Nigerians that things like setting up a committee to manage the affairs of a local government was actually illegal. It was just like a tradition where a governor wakes up, set up a committee and say we are going to do election in the next 6 months. So I see that we are not really enjoying the benefits of separation of powers, where if you're executive well, you are legislature, legislate well, you are judiciary, judiciate well, adjudicate well. Don't leave your own position and begin to do another thing. And then to the second point that you mentioned, right? Why governors are so afraid, and I can tell you, they are really very afraid, right? Is that we used, there's a difference between the money comes through the joint state account, and you are the one in a position to give your boys, to settle your boys, right? And then when your boys have access to that money, the first time maybe, especially when the sharing formula you made with them is not a good one, right? It's maybe draconian, like what we saw in the relationship of a Wike and Fubara, who was his loyalist all his life, and he felt that for this accountant who probably helped me to move funds, if I make him the governor, it's going to be loyalty. Charles, I can tell you that once the money comes to anyone directly, the loyalty of the person is not guaranteed. And before now, local government in Enugu State used to get 150 million, right? Now it's about 300 million with the current reviews and the fact. If you get 300 million and maybe your governor say, at the end of the month, bring 200 million. If you do it first month, do it second month, something will tell you, nah, I better take this risk. He can't remove me, I'm not an appointee. Some stakeholders might even say, 2 years is enough, right? I mean, if you want the battle, I will tell the people, like Fubara did it, and we kept free Fubara came up to say, this is what this guy is negotiating. He is draconian. Could we can remove him even without the federal might? He could not. Even President Tinubu cannot even remove Fubara if he decide at least 4 years is guaranteed, right? And even the State House of Assembly can also not just remove him on trump-up charges. To remove a governor, you need like some very, very serious issues, right? Where you can clinch onto. The only thing is that with this level of fight in Rivers, Fubara really need to be a sense because any impeachable offense, right, will be grossly dealt with by those, loyalists of Wike. So it's something that the governors are afraid because once the money comes, you are now expected by an informal agreement to return the money. So if you return first quarters, something might tell you, am I not being a fool? Is he not elected as I'm elected? Is he submitting his money on monthly basis to the president? So why should I submit to the governor? And the next thing, maybe what is called in the political balance that he's no more lawyer might begin to play out. And at the end of the day, the godfather and the godson is fighting, you know.
Wow.
Okay. We know that we understand that provision of basic amenities are one of the core roles of local government to the natives, and being able to access the funds, as enshrined in the Constitution of 162 subsection 5, also helps the local government. But one may wonder how can this be realized, as this autonomy is shrouded in controversies? How can it be realized?
Okay, so to actually realize that, even the presidency knows the need. And let me tell you the simple truth. You see, like in Nigeria, it's all about assertiveness. The law is oftentimes suspended. We saw how APC came up saying that 25% in Abuja is not compulsory, that Abuja is the 37th state. And I wonder why the Federal Capital Territory is now the 37th instead of the first state, if it is actually should be a state. Wills Wike has even begun to see himself as, we know in Nigeria Constitution, once you do 2 terms as a governor, you cannot run for another position of a governor. Wike, of course, didn't have to run to become the governor in both of Federal Capital Territory. So anybody saying Abuja is like another state of the country is really being diversionary, right? If you also check, like Nigeria adopted its constitution from another nation that, practices a presidential system in some regard. Nigeria constitution is a blend of the UK constitution and that of America. In Washington DC has a special status because there you have all of the federal agencies like you have in Nigeria, right? You have all of the federal workers, the directors. So you can't talk about like having that kind of mix. It's just like comparing in terms of the commercial capital, like in Lagos, where you have all of the headquarters, right? Of all the banks, of all the churches, of all the this, comparing that with every other state. Every nation has its commercial capital and has its administrative capital, right? So, but one thing is that APC came up and insisted on this, that it doesn't matter, you mustn't get 25%. And we saw that the judgment was given in their favor, right? So Nigeria oftentimes is all about like you open eye. We saw when Nigerian police came up and said they want to start charging every vehicle owner 5,000 something. And some Nigerians say we no go agree for Nigerian police. Stood on it. Police, there was no law backing them up to leave their job as an organ of the executive to now become lawmakers, saying if you drive, you will give them 5,000. And some Nigerians told them and said, yes, true, now they carry gun. But nobody made provision for you to be the chief cook and also to be the client at the same time. And Nigerians raised up their voice and it stood. Another role of assertiveness, like we could see, is issue of a constitutional, what is it called? Not even constitutional, security vote, which is not constitutional. It's become a norm, a tradition in Nigeria. I'm really wondering who we challenge that, and perhaps how governors could come after the person's life, right? If you come to say this is not constitutional, or even like the office of the first lady, still not constitutional, but assertiveness have actually set all of these things in place. So it is now an assertiveness of Mr. President and assertiveness of the governors. Unfortunately, we don't have too many people as assertive as what is it called? The governor of Oyo State, Makinde, right? A self-made billionaire who has got his onions, who has no favor to maybe to request of the president. He knows the onions from his suya and I decided to take a stand. And that's what I actually expected the governors to do first. Mr. President, but see the strategy that Fabemi used, if we can all recall. That when they fired up for that suit, right, requesting that states that has not don't have a local government system in place, their funds should be withheld, right? And they told governors, if you have any counter to make, you have such a number of days. Many of them, because as much as they are concerned, like the system where our governors are made, and outgoing governors anoint another governor. And even though they appear off with their people, when it also comes to like protecting their state and being assertive, they cannot. They begin to chicken out. Somebody may just be like, if I come out now and say I'm not supporting Mr. President, what if the Jagaban begin to see me as one singular enemy? And many of them chickened out. And only Makinde came after the judgment must have been passed to say perhaps he was relying that the Supreme Court we look at the law and find out that there is no place for what, there's no provision, right, for Mr. President to be provided at the moment with what is their request before the court. There's no provision for that in the court, in the law. So, but the beautiful thing is that, like getting to what you asked, will now be that finally, since there is a bill, once that is secured, right, we are sure that all of the local government funds will come to the local government. And why I think that is going to be healthy, let me say this because it's very important. The governor certainly will be very angry, right, when you begin to have like many of their godsons breaking out. And will now want to begin to call on the citizens to hold their local government responsible, like the president sometimes to say, check, we've increased their federal allocation, we've increased this, don't just be looking at the center. I'm also sure that the state is going to divest some of the attention they have for people also to look the way of the local governments.
Okay, section 1, 2, and 3 of the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit Act have actually tried to address the overbearing power of states over local government. But same has been lampooned for being inconsistent. How do you address that further? How do you further address that?
Yeah, so what I could just say in all of this, some patience is needed. And what everyone in Nigeria should be hopeful and wishing for would actually be for the financial autonomy of the local government to be sustainably secured. Yes, I'm actually aware of when the Financial Intelligence Unit came up with that policy directing governors, right? Or directing rather that the local government should get their money, right, without further encumbrance from the federal government based on intelligence that was shared. But that isn't enough, because until you actually amend appropriate laws, right? That clearly, because when we say that the Constitution is the ground norm, right? You could have acts, some of those things like acts, gazettes, and all the rest are like they are subsidiary, you understand, of the Constitution. They don't have, even though they are law in some regard, but they're not as powerful as the ground norm. Because if any act comes and it's not consistent with the ground norm, then the Constitution takes its place, right? The Constitution should stand. The Constitution should be able to say, so let me give an instance. If in the Police Act, what is just clearly and insidiously discussed is maybe how to even resist protests, like we saw, and Asare Dokubo says that if some people have right to protest, you have right to resist. you will discover that that wouldn't be consistent with the right of the citizens to expression, to express themselves through protests, rights to peaceful assembly, and all of those things. So the Constitution still takes its precedence, and I think the president is already doing something about that. And once that scales through, I am sure that all of these unclear areas would be fixed.
All right. I want to say a very big thank you. We're almost out of time, but just in 1 minute, just wrap it up. What are you looking forward to the local government elections in Enugu? We're seeing some primaries being done in the last few days. The so-called primaries for the councillorship and the primaries for the chairmanship will be in a few days' time. I think that's tomorrow or so. So what are you looking forward to the Enugu State elections that is coming up October 5th, and that of Anambra that has that will be happening in September and for the first time since 11 years?
Yeah, well, I'm not expecting anything different. When it comes to elections coordinated by the state electoral commissions, it's almost been like a sort of absolute. The winnings. So maybe you could talk about maybe like the 260 wards in Enugu. I mean, since the Fourth Republic, it's almost been like 260 over 260 for PDP and 17 over 17 for PDP. Regrettably, there's really no viable opposition in Enugu. And I really see that as political juggling for a political party only to be seen towards the elections. You begin to look for who to field and posters to print. Politicking is all about, if you are not the ruling party, then you have to be a opposition party. There isn't any opportunity for opportunists. Those are called opportunists. You are not ruling, and you are not even engaging the ruling party. Yet, when there's an opportunity to gather and make noise, you come up, and you must be a joker. You must be a pretender and not a contender. If there's opposition in Enugu, we don't just want to hear them once. We want to hear them all of the time. We want to see them engage on the policy of the ruling parties, right? Interrogate those policies. And then through that, people can begin to see them as those that could do different. Because it's really crazy, like you don't do anything, and then towards the election, you field people. I mean, how are you going to even win? Aside from the fact that electoral commissions have like all of this might, I see that I've not really seen any strategy to change the trend, right?
As far as I'm concerned, are really non-issues.
All right.
Dangote is refined.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chukwuma Okenwa. We do appreciate your take on that, on the local government autonomy. Right now, we'll go for Internet Watch. Do stay with us.